Welcome to another episode of Wayne's World Garage. Last video my wife said was kind of boring. She got tired of watching us saw go in circles and circles and the chainsaw go. So I thought we'd try something a little bit different this Memorial Day, and to give you a little picture of the Dodge Power Wagon we have, and take a ride in the Power Wagon and see how she goes. So first we'll do a little explanation. It's a 1956 version of the Power Wagon. Dodge made them. They made them with the same body style from 1946 all the way up to 1968. A lot of it was made with parts from military vehicles that were left over from World War II. It's a 1-ton truck. It has an 8-foot bed, and it's a 4-wheel drive vehicle. Very uncommon at the time. Not many trucks were 4-wheel drive at all. This was probably the first real truck that was actually 4-wheel drive. The market for this truck was actually for farmers. They tried selling it to farmers because it could be your truck to work in the field, and it could be your truck to go pick up straw, fertilizer, whatever you had to do in town. This truck is relatively stock. Out of the box, the gearing on this is 583 to 1, which means the realistic top speed is close to 35 miles an hour. Okay, one of the upgrades we did is we changed the tires from the bias ply tires, which were absolutely horrendous, to these gorgeous Michelin tires. And these are Michelin XZL tires. These are 37.5 inches tall, 50 pounds each of pressure in them, and these tires are much better. Now, one thing to keep in mind when riding these trucks, as I've learned recently, if you look at the wheels, people say, well, does it shake? It still shakes a little bit. Run out on the wheel from the factory was 150 to 2,000ths of an inch. What we mean by run out is this distance here. It goes wobbles out and back and forth. The reality is, when you're working the farm field at 20 miles an hour or down a dirt road, it didn't make a whole lot of difference. So everyone wants to drive these at 60 miles an hour today, and that's just not very realistic. Okay. The other modifications I've done to this is I've changed the oil filter. It had the little sock thing here, which was absolutely horrendous, and every time you changed it, you had to stuff this big sock in it, which I don't think it did anything, and the old dog ate all my dirty socks, so I didn't have any more filters for it, so I got rid of that. We rebuilt this engine some years ago, about 6 years ago now, and when we rebuilt it, the crankshaft was cracked. So Eggy Machine Shop out in California happened to have an extra crankshaft. It was ground 20 under for the rods and 20 under for the mains. And the pistons in this thing, we bored out about 30 over just to clean it up. It had been rebuilt before we got it. We rebuilt it one more time. The other modifications you'll see on the engine is an external or a remote reservoir for the brake fluid. And these are really challenging to bleed. You pump the brake once or twice, and it runs out of fluid and you get air in it. This little assembly right here connects to it. You have to use a special gasket made out of what they call EPDM rubber on the top of the master cylinder. But now I can remotely, add fluid, and I can remotely, bleed the cylinders because I unscrew the cap and I pressurize it. Additionally, we put power steering on this. The power steering makes it a little bit more drivable. Lastly, people talking about the points going bad all the time. Well, it is 2021. I ran it with the points for a couple weeks after I rebuilt it, but throw those things out and get a Pertronix, get electronic ignition if you intend to drive this on a regular basis without screwing around with changing points and everything else that's going to go bad on it. Let's walk around to the other side a little bit. On the other side of this, it looks pretty complicated. It's called a square top carburetor, okay? And it is a fairly complicated carburetor. People took them and threw them out because they couldn't figure out how to make them run right. Fortunately, there's a couple people around that can rebuild them. Dimitri is his name. Does a good job, and it looks gorgeous too. What some people don't notice is this mechanism here. This is called a King Sealy governor, and more about that now. You'll see it's not connected right now because I don't want to spin the governor and have it working and do anything when I'm not needing it. So I take the belt off it when it's not in use. But the King Sealy governor, with all this complicated linkage arrangement, governs the engine speed. Okay, so it's like an engine speed governor for 1946. Now, why would you need that? Okay, if we go to the back of the truck, this truck has an option which was available back then, and this is called a belt pulley. And if you look at any old farm tractor, it's got a belt pulley on it. And if you take the belt pulley and remove these 4 bolts right here, these nuts. This slides off, and it's a standard PTO shaft for a tractor. So it'll run at 540 RPM. They did have a 3-point hitch with it. They're very, very hard to get. There's only a couple people that have them that I know of, and they got destroyed. And the reason they get destroyed is because, while this may sound like a good idea to use it as a tractor towing something in the field, it's really not very good, because a turning radius is more like a football field instead of a tractor where I can use turning brakes and lock up one tire and basically spin around in 10 feet. This thing doesn't turn, so I assume they destroyed most of them. I do have a hitch coming pretty soon, I hope, which should be not quite the 3-point hitch, but it'll help us tow things, little light things, at least pull things like hay wagons, things like that. And finishing the little walk around here, I've had this truck over 10 years. Probably the biggest mechanical challenge I've had on it when I got it was when I first got it. I was struggling to get these lug nuts off. And anybody that's my age or older already's got it figured out. It's a Chrysler. Left hand of the truck has left-hand lug nuts. You turn them left-handed to loosen them up. What? I don't know what they were thinking, but they were thinking it would work a little bit better if you did it that way. Who knows? On the left-hand side, turn them left. But I got into this and I'm thinking, boy, I can't even get the tires off. Anyway, it's worked out. What have we done to the truck? The engine's been rebuilt. The transmission is a new process, NP420, that's been rebuilt. The transfer case, NP200, that's been rebuilt. On the front of this, there's a winch, and the winch is called a Braden. It's an MU2. It's a 10,000 pound winch. It's got a massive cable and a massive chain on it. I've never used it for reel. I use reel winches today. This thing is scary and sketchy. You need a man inside here who can hear you, who's going to be on the clutch, because the clutch is what makes it go forward and backward and stop. And if you're 100 feet away and somebody says stop and he's drinking coffee or lighting a cigarette, you're going to have a little bit of a problem. So it's a Braden MU2 winch. They sold lots of these with the winches. What you're hearing here, though, is this truck gets a little bit complicated. Okay. So the base price of this truck was $2,449. Okay, not the average Joe could buy them. And if you look at a 2-wheel drive truck with a 5.5-foot bed, it was a lot less money. So the people who were buying these were fire truck companies. They were people who did rigging, they did logging, and heavy equipment. A lot of people put gin poles on the front of them. Okay, the truck weighs about 5,600 pounds as it is right now. The other options it has were the front tow hooks, and I think that's about it. Air conditioning, it's 230 air. 2 windows roll down at 30 miles an hour, and that's all you can get. This was not an option. It came with it. It was a little cowl vent to add a little bit of cooling there, and that actually works pretty well. They were men back then, and they were tough. It's not meant to get groceries at Wegmans and Whole Foods. It's a little bit different than that. The good news is parts are relatively available for these, thanks to a couple people who are manufacturing some replacement panels for them, for the bed panels, doors now, windshield frames, and they're equivalent to OEM. You really can't tell a difference, and that's a good thing. I just want to thank some of the folks who have helped me here on this thing. My buddy Doc Dave has helped a lot with some advice. Clint Dixon, Todd Summers, Dave Horvath, they're the masters and know all about these governors and know all about these PTOs and stuff like that. There's not a lot of people that know about them anymore. Fortunately, I hope I've learned a little bit, and if anybody wants, I can tell you about it. Quick looking underneath this thing. First thing we see is the NP420, new process 420 transmission with a power takeoff. This is the power takeoff here. And that's, of course, goes directly, to the power takeoff, goes directly to the front winch, the Braden MU2 winch. And sorry if you get a little bit dizzy, the back of the power takeoff, it's got 2 drive shafts, and that goes to the rear power takeoff. And so the NP420 transmission here, you're going to get dizzy, but that's okay. One drive shaft here, 2 here, or 1 here, 2 here, 1 here, 1 there, 1 there. So you got 6 drive shafts. So you kind of learn how to rebuild U-joints on drive shafts. It has a 2-speed transfer case. A new process makes that. It's called an NP200. and it works pretty cool. It goes direct. It's not coupled, it's called divorced. It's got a drive shaft which goes to the transmission, and now the transmission, there's another modification I did. It goes to a Laycock overdrive unit, and that's what this little silver thing is here, is the overdrive. And frankly, it goes about, I can get 50 miles an hour on it pretty reliably on a consistent basis without any problems. Out of the box with the short tires without the overdrive, 35 is pretty quick, and it's screaming at 35 miles an hour. Interior truck is pretty bare. Speedometer, oil pressure, that's about it. Voltage and fuel, not a whole lot going on in there. And the windshield wiper controls, and they're pretty simple. We did put seatbelts in here at the insistence of my wife, but the reality is the seatbelts are somewhat hilarious because you know, at 50 miles an hour, if you hit a tree, there's 4 bolts holding the whole cab on, and probably the chassis will stay in one spot near the tree and the cab will go flying with you in the seatbelts. So I don't know what they do besides make the wives happy. So we did put seatbelts in it, and the bed of these things, when it came from the factory, had white oak wood in them, so we replaced it with white oak, although theirs was painted black because who would make it look like this other than people like me? So we made it look a little bit better, and that's about it. How about we take this thing for a ride now? Okay, we're about ready to get going. Happy Memorial to everybody. This is a 1956 Dodge Power Wagon. It's pretty simple inside. We got the speedometer, oil pressure, water temperature, amps, and then the gas tank. Down below, you've got the gearbox, transmission, you've got high range, low range, and you've got the power takeoff, which we talked a little bit about. If you look at this, it claims top speed is 52 miles an hour or something. That's ridiculous. It'll never go that fast. I put this little speedometer over here and there, a GPS speedometer, to give me a much better clue of how fast we're going. So to start it, it's got 3 pedals since it's a standard transmission. So you got to push in the clutch, put it in neutral, turn the key on. It's been running, so maybe there's a little bit of choke. Let's see. And then we're good to go. And from here, we'll let it roll. Always start out in 2nd gear, slowing up here. Watch out for my puppy dog in front of us. Usually he moves. Come on, Inky. Thank you, Inky. Stop sign. I don't know how well the audio is going to come out, but it's practice stop sign. used a lot of stop leaks. That's how we fixed the leaks in the truck. That was a failure. Fixed all that when we rebuilt the engine, and right now the temperature rocks all the time. Does give it a little bit of extra speed at the expense of gas mileage, but again, what do we really care? And now we'll wait for the traffic and Dave's to go to slow down before we hit the go button. Clear on the right after this guy, right?
Yes.
Acceleration. Speeding along now at 35 miles an hour, almost 40 miles an hour. Strength and radial tire. Things are working right, you should be able to hit the brakes, slow down well, with no pulsations, and your steering wheel shouldn't be going all over the place. There's not much to do on our front end alignment here. That's the